I'm Margaret Ann Windsor, and I was kidnapped in 1941 at age 2, and I only found out in 1983 after I'd been in a political campaign to replace a Dr. Congressman that I had written about in a medical malpractice book that's unpublished because, quite frankly, they tried to kill me April Fool Day of 80. I was flown out later to Larry Flint's, who had been shot in Lawrenceville, Georgia, while I was doing the book about program shooters and how mind control is used to create illnesses or cure them. So this would really spoil the medical profession. So I don't know. The information I put up is all true, but most people don't want it told. So I wanted to finish this about Michael Thevis. I tried to go back over, I don't usually do that, my videos, but in the end it sounded like you could hardly hear it now. I don't know if this will help or not. Um, anyway, Michael Thevis was pornography, and there and I don't know what else. I don't know. I remember he was tried and it was bounced around. It was moved to Florida. And then I think he escaped. I mean, if you Google it, surely it will tell. I know he escaped. And he was going to be retried again, and his son was kidnapped. And this is in the span of about 1977 to 80, I believe. I had gotten a letter from the FBI, ongoing investigation about the book. Well, I thought it was about the book. I found out in 83 I was kidnapped. It's really that, who I am and my father. So I wanted to get this up, though. Um, Hopefully I can help a little. Michael Thevis, let me say this, Bob Barkley, you're getting cryptic, Barkley as in the Barkley, bank associated with the Bank of England and Barkley in England. Um, Bob Barkley, Robert Barkley, was a friend of my husband's. But now this goes back a few years further, and about 70 on through, they remained friends. Now I met his wife, and I went out to their home, and it was out away from Atlanta. Not away, it was a suburb. I just can't remember the place. And it was secluded at the time, kind of. There was a lake and a canoe behind their home. Although their home wasn't fancy at all, it was just an average home and not uh, probably not even middle class. So it kind of shocked me when the former governor, Lester Maddox, bought it, and I guess you could say I met him. I talked with him. I was in the campaign to replace Larry McDonald in 83. And I think that was the reason he agreed to see me, but I knocked at the door and I didn't get him, so I just left it in front of his door, the box of information. And I left, but I looked back and he was picking it up. So he knew I was there. But if you ever read about Lester Maddox, I mean, you know, knowing what I do now, Lester Maddox was probably not as bad as they tried to make him out to be, okay? Now then, back to Michael Thevis. There's some things I know I can't tell. Uh, well, I don't even know. I just know a little. Some things that should not have been done. Um, anyway, my husband knew Bob Barkley, and I met Bob's wife and went out to their home. Christmas Eve, I was working for Forsyth and Kucher in 1977, and she died of an aneurysm. And I went to the funeral, and I remember I tripped over her grave, of all things, and it was my right leg. I thought I'd broken it. And it wasn't even a real grave. It was one of those that's elevated. It was flat with a monument, and it was by the river or something. It had this, or a big, huge lake itself. This is more a pond, big pond lake that their home was at, and had a canoe behind it. Anyway, I'd met her, and I'd met her more than once, and I kind of got to know Bob, and I liked him very much over the years. I think he was a nice man. His friends and my husband's. And okay, how's that connect to Michael Thevis? I'm trying to give a timeline here. Um, anyway, well, here's the after she died, and this would have been probably while I was doing the book, and Larry Flint was shot in Lawrenceville, Georgia, by a program shooter, and that's how Bob's wife was killed. With what I'm talking about, mind control. That's what scares people. I don't do it, and it's done a lot of them. How will you ever know murders? Duke Wayne was one of them. If you go back, it looks so thorough, but I know that from high up sources, besides me putting it together, knowing it was done in patterns. So I'm going to leave it because Steve McQueen's was, and one of the doctors I worked for years ago in Huntsville, when I was there in 80 to 82, I went to Dr. Anderson. He's probably deceased now. He was really a nice doctor. I was shocked when I went in there. I didn't even think he would remember me. And he started talking about Steve McQueen in tapes that he had heard, and then I heard it later on the radio, where Steve McQueen was taken across the state line. He was put on a bed in Mexico, and they operated on him and killed him. And it's a horror. Now then, I actually heard it myself too. But for Dr. Anderson to come in and start talking to me about it, I guess Dr. Anderson knew about what I was doing in the book and all that. But anyway, back to Bob Barkley. Bob, after she died, he dated, this gets weird, the timeline of some of it. Bob started, he just dated the girl that was a girlfriend of Michael Thevis, the porn. I don't think he dated her but a few times, but anyway, she was over at his home. He still had that home. And he stole, during the night, she stole all his credit cards and everything. And I don't know how much he knew or what or why they subpoenaed Bob to the Rome. This would have been later, I guess. I didn't go back and check this out. This would have been later in 1980, maybe, that they tried him in Rome. And what I remember was the agent that I've been calling Michael Kean, is special agent, is not Michael Kean. I Googled later on Michael Kean, special agent, retired then. He had children, and he was real religious, and he didn't even look like the man I call Michael Kean that came out and said he was special agent in charge, Michael Kean, and they don't usually interview a special agent. He came out, and now Bob had been called subpoenaed to come out there and testify, but he didn't. But my husband went with him. I don't think he testified, though he was subpoenaed. Now then, they interviewed who I thought was Michael Kean, and it wasn't. And they called him Michael Kean. He's blonde, and he's on the Barkley commercials, cigarette commercials in 1980 through. What are your weekly? I can't even remember because I don't buy them. But the magazines throughout Alabama and Georgia, because I saw them for about 3 months or longer in 1980. Okay, he's got blonde hair. I think he had sunglasses on, but I knew the minute I saw it. And it's a Barkley commercial. Now then, he came out and they interviewed him. And that's all I can say about that. And I guess I'm not saying a lot here about Michael Thevis, except when they came out from the trial in Rome of Michael Thevis, they said it would be over in Rome. Now then, I didn't know then what I know now. I knew it was cryptic, though. I didn't know about my kidnapping and all that and who my father was. And the reason for the takedown of him was he was married to Claudia Ruth O'Keefe, She was actually the queen in 36, and they took him down with character assassination. He never married Wallace Simpson. It was lies, double imposters. They had more than one. They were going out and actually doing all this stuff that was said to be my father, King Edward VIII, and it wasn't. He never married Wallace. He remained married to my mom. They really did a number on my father because he had integrity and he wouldn't go along with the Illuminati, the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, Bilderbergers that control your banking. And Kennedy, JFK was in on it. My uncle, illegal George VI, took orders, and so they made him illegal king, but they're still there. And Elizabeth's high up in the Illuminati. So I guess I'm giving some background there, and I guess I've lost my train of thought for a minute. I wanted to put this up because I'm not sure that part of it went up. I don't usually not redo, but go back and listen to them. But I did this one, and the sound was kind of off, so I'm redoing this one. I'm going to stop there because I guess I don't really know that much about Michael Thevis, other than something in my memory when I lived at Westgate that was done. It wasn't a murder or anything else. I don't guess you could call it that, but it was certainly something against a person's will. And they would not have stood for it at all, that I was told. So I hope I've helped, and I'm going to stop there. Let me say this, though, before I go. The treaties that were signed by George VI, who's illegal, so the treaties are illegal, that took down my father, and he helped kidnap his own niece. They're illegal. They're the beginning of the global government, the Illuminati, the one world government, being able to position themselves and therefore capture, if you want to call it, and that's it, the other monarchs, Sweden, Denmark, Netherlands, etc. Netherlands is where they put the war tribunal and Henry Kissinger. That, man, I hope the world gets to see the 18-minute tapes, the real ones where they were subpoenaed, and see what Henry Kissinger really is. He was Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State under Nixon, the sorry rat, both of them. But this was the beginning of the global government completing its mission, and it's now known as the United Nations. And so we can get into Martin Luther King, who they celebrated his 50th birthday. And by the way, when I was out at Hustler Magazine and they furnished me a car after that campaign I was in, to replace Larry McDonald, one of the subjects, he was a doctor congressman in my book, and he helped in trying to have me killed. And Mr. Flynn even mentions that in the endorsement that I put up all the time, that Larry McDonald was part of having him killed. Well, history would tell you that another man shot Larry Flint and killed the attorney, and the judge was badly hurt in it. So I guess, where am I going? I'm losing my train of thought going back and forth and not in the best health right at the moment. So I guess I'm just going to stop here. That was the beginning of global government and Martin Luther King. When I went out to Mr. Flint's, he had furnished me a car. And I had been shut down in D.C. to where I couldn't get a job again without money. So I was going to go back out there, and I couldn't get in touch with him. Except an agent had called me that I knew, Malcolm Barber. They had actually sent me a copy of this magazine, April the 6th of 84, when I'm in D.C. and had a home for a bit in Falls Church, and worked for Ron Ziegler out of a temp agency. He's a good guy, by the way. But I couldn't find work anymore. I was blocked. So I was taking the car back out and going back out to Flint's, because when I'd call Hustler, they wouldn't hang up on me. They just keep transferring me till I got tired, and they wouldn't come back. They'd leave me on hold. So I was out there, and I remember I had no money. I stopped, and I had no idea that's where Martin Luther King had, seeing if this is going up, had been shot. I knew he'd been shot, of course. That was a program shooter, too. But nobody cares about me, you know. This stuff is all happening.